Today we'll talk about Tokyo Ghoul. At the 20th Ward's Aqua Building, and believed to be ghouls, the CCG is dispatched immediately. At the Aqua Building, a female ghoul feasts nude on a pile of corpses. She is interrupted by a masked man who has orders to apprehend her. They have a confrontation before the female ghoul, dissatisfied from having her meal interrupted and unthreatened, steals the masked man's pliers before taking off, leaving him enraged. The female ghoul tosses the pliers off the top of the building. The next day, ordinary college student Ken Kaneki sits at a cafe with his best friend, Hideyoshi Nagachika, while the news reports the incident at the Aqua Building in the background. Hyde teases Kaneki about his crush and his lack of experience until he calls a waitress over. After Hyde takes his order, he asks the waitress's name and she introduces herself as Tuka Kurishima. Kaneki scolds Hyde for flirting with her until she ran away, but is then captivated by Rise Kamishiro, who just entered. Later that night, Kaneki informs Hyde over the phone that he and Rise have an upcoming bookstore date. Hyde rides his bike by the Aqua Building where ghoul investigators Yasutomo Nakajima and IP Kasuba investigate. They discuss ghouls and their lack of worth, considering them worse than animals. On their date, they go to a restaurant while discussing their favorite author. After their bookstore date, Rise confides Kaneki that she lives near where all these ghoul-related crimes are taking place and is scared. Taking a turn down a dark alley as they approach Rise's home, the waitress Tuka walks by with her friend and glances suspiciously at them before she continues on. Alone, Kaneki asks to see Rise again and things appear to be going well. She too expresses interest. Kaneki blushes as she reveals her liking for him, and Rise embraces Kaneki and bites his shoulder. With sadistic joy, Rise attacks Kaneki with her kagune and corners him at a construction site. After Rise impales him, Kaneki appears dead, but before she can eat him, Rise is crushed by falling steel beams. Kaneki notes that since the incident, the food starts to taste bad, but his doctor assures him that nothing is physically wrong and that it was most likely psychological. After being discharged, Kaneki walks home and thinks that something has been strange since the incident and that it feels like a dream. When he arrives home, he finds a bag of groceries and a note from Hyde at his door, telling him, among other things, that he brought his favorite burger. Sitting on his bed, a television program airs in which a ghoul expert explains ghoul biology. He rushes home and, horrified by his eye, Kaneki tries to deliver a stab to his stomach only for the knife to break. Kaneki suffers an emotional breakdown, then wanders the streets while fighting his craving for human flesh. He chases a delicious aroma that reminds him of his mother's cooking and is hopeful that it is something harmless he can eat until he stumbles across a ghoul eating a corpse. Nishiki is angry about other ghouls trespassing on his territory and attacks Kaneki next. Tuka intervenes, and she and Nishiki argue over the territory before a fight breaks out. It ends quickly, and Nishiki flees. Kaneki continues to struggle with his hunger, and Tuka offers him flesh. Tuka is confused by Kaneki's denial of it, then recognizes him as the person who was with Rise. Kaneki, confused and upset, cannot comprehend ghouls or his situation and vehemently denies eating human flesh and retaining his humanity. Tired of Kaneki's attitude, Tuka shoves meat into his mouth. King Kaneki refused to indulge in human flesh. He's disgusted at Tuka Kurishima tries to force feed him and is beaten after he refers to ghouls as monsters. Tuka has no sympathy for Kaneki's plight, so continues to assault and invalidate his issues as inferior to hers. Manager Yoshimura appears to stop Tuka and reminds her of Antiku's purpose. Yoshimura invites Kaneki in for coffee and learns that it is the only thing ghouls can consume aside from humans. Yoshimura believes that after the organ transplant, Kaneki's body is becoming more like a ghoul's. As his hunger intensifies, it becomes so overwhelming that he begins to hallucinate Rise. She taunts him about his half-ghoul nature and tempts him to give into his hunger. Before he caves in, he gets a text message from his best friend, Hideyoshi Nagachika, and tosses the meat away. The next day, he returns to school and is greeted enthusiastically by Hyde, who regales Kaneki with what he had been up to recently. After the greeting, Kaneki remembers back to his childhood when Hyde would greet him the same way and when he was gone from school for a long time. To Kaneki's shock, it turns out that the upperclassman is Nishiki Nishio, the ghoul who threatened Kaneki earlier. Nishiki acts casually and then invites Hyde to his home to retrieve something. Afraid for Hyde's life, Kaneki insists he come along and Nishiki allows him. Nishiki punts Hyde further beneath the overpass and forcefully tries to get Kaneki to reveal his intentions for hiding. After injuring Kaneki, Nishiki vomits the food he ate earlier onto Hyde, who had been knocked out unconscious, and taunts Kaneki by threatening to hurt his friend further. Kaneki tries to stop him, but he's too weak. Considering the fight over, Nishiki approaches Hyde and is glad to see Kaneki is still conscious. Filled with memories of his best friend, Kaneki summons his Kaguni for the first time. Kaneki defeats Nishiki, but is overcome with hunger. Kaneki wakes up in Antiku with the taste of blood in his mouth. Yoshimura checks up on him and takes him to see Hyde, who is resting in another room. His immediate relief dissipates as he is overcome with anxiety over what he almost did, and the taste of blood is in his mouth. Yoshimura admits that Kaneki was fed while in his sleep to satisfy his hunger, or he would have killed his friend. Feeling more alone than ever, Kaneki begins to crumble, but Yoshimura assures him that with the way he is now, he has a place in both the ghoul and human world. Left alone, Hyde opens his eyes and smiles at himself. Elsewhere, Kutaro Amon and his partner Kureo Madu just arrive at the 20th Ward and are investigating the binge eater and Jason cases. Madu finds their first major clue in the case: the pliers Rise stole from Jason and then threw away. Dr. Asaki Figuchi is attending to a patient when he gets an unwelcome visit. With a threatening aura, Jason demands the doctor make him new pliers before leaving the terrified Figuchi family, promising to return. At Antiku, Ken Kaneki is becoming accustomed to his new job as a waiter and a ghoul. Kaneki reaches the service area of the cafe where Hideyoshi Nagachika has made a surprise visit. He came to thank Tuka Kirishima for helping them after the accident, as Hyde made no indication he remembered the incident with Nishiki Nishio. Hyde leaves, and right away, Tuka warns Kaneki that if his friend ever found out that they were ghouls, she would kill him. At the CCG 20th Ward's branch office, a meeting is being held to discuss critical ghoul investigations. The meeting is being held by Isuki Maruda, who is wrapping up his report about the potential of a Rise ghoul gang in the 11th Ward. After Kutaro Amon introduces himself and delivers his report on the investigation of the binge eater, Jason, and the pliers his partner found, Maruda is impressed with Amon, and after a short banter with Kureo Madu, orders them to lead the investigation in the 20th Ward. Thinking of all the dangerous ghouls, Madu grows excited. At Antiku, Yoshimura teaches Kaneki how to eat human food. After Kaneki vomits on his first try, Yoshimura shows him special techniques. He then gives Kaneki special sugar cubes to curb his hunger, and while they are on the subject of food, Yoshimura asks Kaneki to help him acquire food on Tuka's behalf as she is busy studying. The idea terrifies him, but he agrees. That night, Kaneki accompanies Renji Yomo to pick up food, where he learns that Antiku scavenges for suicide victims. At Antiku, Yoshimura tells Kaneki that he should have a mask and asks Tuka to take him to get one made. She is annoyed and reluctant, but Yoshimura convinces her once he says that there are doves in the area. The next day, she takes him to Heisei Art Mask Studio, where they meet Uta. Uta takes Kaneki's measurements and asks questions that seem unrelated. He eventually asks if he is interested in Tuka, but Kaneki finds her scary. However, Uta thinks she is a hard worker and explains the difficult lives she and other ghouls live, especially when they associate with humans. Understanding the situation better, he then asks why he needs a mask. Tuka is annoyed that Yoshimura did not explain anything, so she tells him it is to protect his identity from investigators. During their investigation, Amon and Madu corner two ghouls and again ask about Jason's pliers. They know nothing, so Madu attacks them both, but one survives. Kaneki brings Hanami the coffee, apologizes, then turns to leave when Hanami asks what he is. Kaneki tries to explain that he is both human and ghoul, but Hanami senses his discomfort, so apologizes too. Kaneki quickly changes the subject and they begin to talk about her art, family, and the book she is reading. Kaneki teaches her kanji and promises to teach her more. Elsewhere, the ghoul who survived Madu and Amon meets with one of his friends and they talk about how the 20th ward has become dangerous with the increase in investigators and dangerous ghouls. Hanami and her mother visit Antiku and Hanami is in a much better mood to everyone's relief. Soon after they head upstairs, Antiku is visited by a strange man with a strange presence. Antiku is visited by the strange Shu Tsukiyama, who quickly takes an interest in Kaneki. Kaneki, however, is put off by his behavior. Kaneki wonders who he is, and Tuka warns him to stay away. Later, the eyes of virgins are served to Tsukiyama as a meal, and he reminisces about Kaneki's scent. At school, Tuka has lunch with her best friend, Yoriko Kosaka. Yoriko is disappointed that Tuka is not eating well, so convinces her to eat some of her homemade food. During his break, Kaneki reads and has coffee at his college campus when Tsukiyama visits him. Kaneki is suspicious, but they quickly bond over books. Tsukiyama notices that Kaneki is reading Sen Takasugi's Monochrome Rainbow, so invites him to a cafe that the author is rumored to visit. He mentioned that he was friends with Rise, piquing his interest. After bonding for some time, Kaneki agrees to see him again. Yomo takes Kaneki to an underground area where he begins training him in hand-to-hand combat and wants to have sessions with him every day after work. Afterward, Yomo takes Kaneki to Helter Skelter to meet the bar owner, Itori. There are rumors of another one-eyed ghoul and that they are born between a ghoul and a human parents, but since pregnancy is so difficult, their existence is regarded as a myth. Yomo becomes upset, and Itori assures them that they are only rumors, but the idea sticks in Kaneki's mind. Sometime later, Kaneki and Tsukiyama meet at the cafe and begin talking about Rise. Tsukiyama talks about what they spoke of, but recalls a terrible memory of when he invited Rise to join his gourmet club and was rudely rejected. Tsukiyama gives him a handkerchief and offers to take Kaneki to one of Rise's favorite places as an apology. Kaneki agrees and offers to wash Tsukiyama's bloodied handkerchief, but Tsukiyama goes to wash it instead. Tsukiyama appears introduced as Mr. M.M., who enthralls the audience with Kaneki's human scent and declares him the night's meal. Madame A's scrapper, Taro, is brought out as the executioner and clumsily greets the audience before attacking Kaneki. Kaneki takes the opportunity to run, kicking Taro on the side of the head as he leaps over his shoulder, but it has little effect. While running, Kaneki's legs become numb and he falls. Kaneki's Kakugan activates and the crowd is shocked to see a one-eyed ghoul. In a burst of anger, Kaneki forces his way out of Taro's grip and punches him away. Madame A orders Taro to get up, but he writhes with pain on the ground. Seeing that Kaneki is a legendary one-eyed ghoul, Tsukiyama is overcome with passion. Madame A and the crowd cheer until Taro gets up and approaches Kaneki, who is too weak from the drugs to fight anymore. But Tsukiyama arrives and pierces Taro through the back with his bare hands. Tsukiyama critically injures Taro, and while he lies dying, Madame A insults him until he cries. Tsukiyama approaches Kaneki and plays the whole thing off as a joke, but leans in and sniffs him. He thinks of what a treasure Kaneki is and plans to make him all his. Did you enjoy this recap? If you did, kindly like this video and subscribe to our channel so we can bring you the recap of the next episodes. Until next time, do take care and stay safe.